The red emergency lights bathed the cockpit of the Terran starfighter in an ominous glow. Lieutenant Jack Miller gripped his control stick tighter as another explosion rocked the space around him. The Battle of Kepler Station was not going well. All fighters maintained defensive formation around the carrier. Commander Ross's voice crackled through the comm system. No one breaks rank. That's an order. Jack checked his tactical display. The enemy's swarm ships numbered in the hundreds, their organic vessels moving like a school of predatory fish through the darkness of space. The human fleet was holding, but barely. Every pilot counted dot, then he heard it. A distress signal on an emergency frequency rarely used by the Alliance forces. This is Captain Vex of the Krill Marine Corps. We are trapped on mining asteroid Delta 7. Engines destroyed. Life support failing. 30 Marines still alive. Request immediate evacuation. Jack knew the Krill. They were humanity's newest allies. 7-foot-tall warriors with thick blue skin and forearms. They had joined the fight against the swarm just 3 months ago. Good fighters, honorable beings. But they were still learning to trust humans. He switched to his squadron channel. Control, this is Eagle 5. I'm picking up a distress call from Krill Marines on Delta 7. Negative. Eagle 5, came the immediate response. All units maintain position. We cannot spare any ships. Jack looked at his scanner. Delta 7 was 12 minutes away at maximum burn. The asteroid was deep in the combat zone, surrounded by at least 40 swarm vessels. It would be suicide to attempt a rescue, but those Marines would die without help. Control. Those Marines have maybe 20 minutes of air left, Jack argued. I can reach them in 12. Lieutenant Miller, you will maintain position. Commander Ross's voice was firm. We cannot risk losing a fighter for 30 Marines. The carrier needs protection. Jack's hands tightened on the controls. In the distance, he could see the flash of weapons fire near Delta 7. The swarm had found the Marines. They were not just going to die, they were going to be slaughtered. He thought about his grandfather's stories from Earth's old wars, about how humans had always been different from other species in the galaxy. While others followed protocol and logic, humans followed their hearts. It was both their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. Sorry, Commander, Jack muttered, pushing his throttle forward. But I didn't join the Space Force to watch good soldiers die. His starfighter shot forward, leaving the defensive formation behind. Immediately, his comm system erupted with angry voices. Eagle 5, return to formation immediately. Miller, you're violating direct orders. Jack, don't be an idiot. He switched off the comm and focused on his flying. The swarm ships noticed his approach and began turning toward him. His fighter's AI calculated his odds of survival at less than 8%. 8% is better than 0, he said to himself. Activating his weapon systems, the first wave of swarm fighters came at him fast. Jack rolled his starfighter hard to the right, launching a spread of missiles. 2 enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes. He dove under return fire, feeling his ship shake as energy bolts passed inches from his hull. Thought his fighter was faster than the swarm vessels, but heavily outnumbered. He jinked left, then right, using every trick he had learned in flight school. Another missile found its mark. 3 down, 37 to go. The asteroid loomed ahead, a massive chunk of rock spinning slowly in space. He could see the damaged Krill transport attached to its surface, surrounded by swarm boarding craft. The enemy was already trying to break in. Hold on, boys, Jack whispered, diving toward the asteroid. The cavalry's coming. His fighter's computer screamed warnings as more swarm ships closed in behind him. Jack ignored them all. He had made his choice. He would save those Marines or die trying, because that's what humans did. They broke the rules. They took impossible odds. They refused to abandon their allies, and sometimes just sometimes. They won. Jack's starfighter screamed through space as enemy plasma bolts lit up the darkness around him. His shields were down to 40% and dropping fast. The asteroid Delta 7 grew larger in his viewport, its cratered surface offering the only possible cover from the pursuing swarm. He barrel-rolled between two massive swarm cruisers, their biomechanical hulls pulsing within sickly green light. His targeting computer locked onto the nearest boarding craft attached to the Krill transport. With precise shots, he destroyed its connection tube, sending it spinning into space. Computer, open emergency frequency, Jack commanded while pulling into a tight spiral to avoid incoming fire. Channel open. The AI responded. Captain Vex, this is Lieutenant Miller of the Terran Space Force. I'm here to get you out. Can you hear me? Static filled the cockpit for several seconds before a deep, gravelly voice responded. Human pilot? You came alone? Are you insane? Probably, Jack admitted, destroying another boarding craft. How many of your Marines can still fight? 20 warriors remain combat ready. But our weapons are limited, and we have wounded. Jack checked his tactical display. More swarm ships were converging on his position. He had minutes at most before they overwhelmed him completely. But he noticed something interesting. The asteroid had old mining tunnels throughout it. Captain, can your Marines move through the mining tunnels to the north side of the asteroid? Yes, but our transport is here on the south side. Trust me, Jack said, pulling his fighter into a sharp climb as 3 swarm fighters opened fire where he had been seconds before. Get your Marines moving now. Leave the transport. Leave our ship? Human, that makes no sense. Do you trust me or not? Jack shot back, launching his last missiles at a cluster of enemy fighters. 4 more swarm ships exploded, but dozens remained. There was a pause. Then Vex spoke again. We are moving. But human, if this is a trick, it's not a trick. It's something we humans call improvisation. Jack dove back toward the asteroid, using its rocky surface as cover. His fighter's belly scraped against stone as he flew mere meters above the surface. Swarm ships tried to follow, but several crashed into protruding rocks, their organic hulls not designed for such precise flying. His ship's computer highlighted the northern section of the asteroid. There was an old docking platform there, abandoned but still intact, large enough for a fighter to land. Captain Vex, status report. We are halfway through the tunnels. But human, there is no ship here. How will we escape? Jack grinned despite the situation. Who said anything about another ship? Get ready for the universe's bumpiest ride. He brought his fighter around for a landing approach. This was the craziest part of his crazy plan. Starfighters were designed for 1 pilot, maybe 2 in emergency situations. But 30 Marines? The landing platform rushed up to meet him. Jack fired his retro thrusters at the last second, touching down hard enough to buckle his landing struts. Immediately, he began emergency modifications to his fighter systems. Computer, dump all weapons power to structural integrity fields. Extend the emergency shield bubble to maximum. Warning, this will leave the vessel defenseless. Do it anyway. Through his cockpit glass, he saw the first Krill Marines emerging from a tunnel. They were massive beings, their blue skin covered in battle armor, each carrying wounded comrades. Captain Vex was easy to spot. He had scarred armor and moved with the authority of a veteran commander. Jack popped his cockpit and stood up. Everyone climb on. Grab onto anything you can. Vex stared at him with all 4 of his eyes. You want us to ride on the outside of your fighter? Unless you have a better idea in the next 30 seconds, yes. The ground shook as swarm drop pods began landing nearby. They were out of time. You heard the human. Vex roared to his Marines. Mount up. Mag lock your boots and hold tight. The Krill Marines swarmed over Jack's fighter, attaching themselves to the wings, the fuselage, anywhere they could find purchase. Their magnetic boots clamped onto the metal hull. The wounded were held secure by their comrades. Jack dropped back into his seat as Captain Vex squeezed onto the fighter's nose, right in front of the cockpit, all secured human. This is insane. Welcome to human problem-solving, Captain. Hold on. Jack fired his engines. The overloaded fighter struggled to lift off, engines screaming in protest. But slowly, impossibly, they began to rise. Asterisk. The starfighter lurched upward with 30 krill marines clinging to its hull like barnacles. Jack's engines screamed in protest as the fighter, designed for one person, now carried the weight of an entire platoon. Warning lights flashed across his console. Engine temperature critical. Structural stress exceeding safety limits. Power core fluctuating dangerously. This is going to work, Jack muttered through gritted teeth, pulling back on the control stick. It has to work. The fighter cleared the asteroid's surface just as swarm ground forces reached the landing platform. Plasma fire erupted behind them, but the shots went wide. The enemy hadn't expected their prey to escape in such an insane manner. Through his cockpit glass, Jack could see Captain Vex pressed against the nose of his fighter, the krill commander's 4 arms wrapped around whatever handholds he could find. The alien's expression was a mix of terror and amazement. All Marines sound off. Vex commanded through the comm system. One by one, 30 voices confirmed they were still attached. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. The space around them erupted into chaos as swarm fighters converged on their position. Without weapons, Jack had only one option: fly like he'd never flown before. He rolled the fighter hard to starboard, hearing several krill marines grunt from the G-forces. A stream of bioplasma scorched past where they'd been moments before. Jack pushed the nose down, diving toward a debris field from an earlier battle. "Human, what are you doing?" Vex shouted, "Trust me." Jack replied, weaving between floating chunks of destroyed ships. The swarm fighters followed, but their larger size made navigation difficult. One clipped a piece of wreckage and spun out of control. Jack's hands danced over the controls, making micro-adjustments that kept them milliseconds ahead of death. His grandfather had been a fighter pilot in Earth's atmospheric wars. He'd always said flying was more than following rules. It was about feeling the machine, becoming one with it. Right now, Jack felt every rivet, every bolt, every stressed component of his overloaded fighter. And somehow, impossibly, they held together. "Marines, brace for acceleration." Jack warned, spotting a gap in the swarm formation ahead. He pushed the throttle to maximum. The fighter shot forward like a bullet, the sudden acceleration pressing everyone flat against the hull. They passed between 2 swarm cruisers, so close that Jack could see the organic corridors inside their translucent sections. The enemy weapons couldn't track them at this speed, but Jack knew the engines couldn't maintain it for long. Already, he could smell burning circuitry. "Commander Ross, this is Eagle 5. Jack broadcast on the emergency frequency. I have 30 krill marines aboard and am heading for the carrier. Request immediate fighter escort and medical teams standing by." There was a long pause before Ross responded. "Miller, did you just say you have 30 Marines on your fighter?" "Affirmative, sir." "It's a long story. Ada 3 minutes if my engines hold." Another pause. "Fighter Squadron Delta is moving to intercept. Miller, when we get back, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about following orders." "Looking forward to it, sir." A proximity alarm screamed. Jack glanced at his rear display. 12 swarm fighters closing fast. His engines were at 110% capacity. Any more, and they'd explode. Then salvation appeared. 6 Terran fighters streaked past them, weapons blazing. The escort had arrived. Explosions bloomed behind them as the human pilots engaged the swarm. "Almost there," Jack told the Marines. "Just hold on a little longer." The human carrier grew larger ahead, a massive gray vessel bristling with weapons. Its hangar doors were open, medical teams visible inside. Jack began to reduce speed, his engines grateful for the reprieve. That's when he noticed Captain Vex looking directly at him through the cockpit glass. The Krill commander raised one of his 4 arms in what Jack recognized as their gesture of highest respect. "You are either the bravest or most foolish human I have ever met," Vex said over the comm. "Why not both?" Jack replied with a grin dot as they entered the carrier's hangar. Jack reflected on what they'd just accomplished. 30 lives saved. An impossible rescue completed. And perhaps most importantly, a bond of trust forged between 2 species. The landing was rough. The moment the fighter touched down, Marines and medics rushed forward. The Krill warriors were helped off the fighter, some limping, others carrying wounded, but all alive. The hangar bay erupted into controlled chaos as medical teams rushed toward the Krill Marines. Jack powered down his fighter's overtaxed engines, which gave one final wheeze before falling silent. Smoke drifted from several components that had been pushed far beyond their design limits. He popped the cockpit and climbed out on shaking legs. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fading, replaced by exhaustion. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. Captain Vex approached him, walking with the distinctive 4-legged gait of his species. Up close, Jack could see the battle damage on the Krill's armor, scorch marks, dents, and at least one still bleeding wound on his upper left arm. "Lieutenant Miller," Vex said formally, then did something unexpected. He dropped to one knee, a gesture Jack had never seen a Krill perform for a human. "You have saved my warriors. The Krill do not forget such debts. Please stand up," Jack said, uncomfortable with the display. "We're all eyes. It's what we do." Vex rose, his 4 eyes studying Jack intently. "No, it is what humans do. No other species would have attempted what you did today. When the Council hears of this ... double quotes, Lieutenant Miller." Jack turned to see Commander Ross striding across the hangar, his expression unreadable. Behind him walked Admiral Park, the fleet commander herself. Jack straightened to attention, suddenly very aware that he had violated direct orders. "Sir, I can explain." Ross held up a hand. "You violated a direct order. You abandoned your post during battle. You risked valuable military equipment on an unauthorized rescue mission. Yes, sir. You also saved 30 Allied Marines, strengthened our alliance with the Krill, and demonstrated exactly why humanity leads this coalition." Ross's stern expression cracked into a small smile. "It was reckless, stupid, and absolutely brilliant." Admiral Park stepped forward. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the hangar. "Lieutenant, I've been in communication with the Krill High Command. They're calling you the mad human who rides the storm. Apparently, that's a compliment. Additionally," she continued, "your rescue has been broadcast across their fleet. Do you know what this means for our alliance?" Jack shook his head. The Krill value courage above all else. But more than that, they value loyalty to allies. You've just shown 12,000 Krill warriors. The humans will risk everything to save their people. That's worth more than any treaty. A medical officer approached Captain Vex. "Sir, we need to treat that wound." Vex waved him off with 2 arms while keeping his eyes on Jack. "Lieutenant Miller, my warriors and I owe you a life debt. Among my people, this is sacred. From this day forward, wherever you go in battle, the Krill will follow." "That's not necessary," Jack began. "It is not about necessity," Vex interrupted. "It is about honor. You showed us something today that we did not believe possible. Other species speak of calculated risks, acceptable losses. But you You simply refuse to let us die. Another Krill Marine approached, younger than Vex, with bright green markings on his blue skin. Captain, all warriors accounted for. 3 critical but stable. The human medics, they are very skilled. See that, Private Tor? Vex said to the younger Krill. Humans save lives they have no obligation to save, then heal wounds they did not cause. Remember this day. Admiral Park's communicator beeped. She checked it and frowned. The swarm is regrouping for another attack. All pilots report to briefing in 10 minutes. She looked at Jack. That includes you, Lieutenant. Think your fighter can be repaired in time? Jack looked at his smoking starfighter. Maintenance crews were already swarming over it, replacing damaged components. Chief Martinez, the head mechanic, gave him a thumbs up. She fly, Admiral. Good, because Captain Vex has made an interesting proposal. His Marines want to provide close support for our fighter operations. Apparently, after today's ride, they think our fighters are the safest place in the battle. Everyone turned to look at the Krill captain, who managed what might have been a grin on his alien features. My warriors say humans are crazy enough to fly these small ships. Then we are crazy enough to ride them into battle. Together, we will show the swarm what happens when humans and Krill unite. Jack couldn't help but laugh. Captain, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Around them, human and Krill personnel worked side by side, preparing for the next battle. Asterisk. 3 hours later, the combined human-Krill fleet faced the largest swarm armada yet encountered. Over 1,000 bioships spread across space like a cancer, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent energy. Jack sat in his repaired fighter, running through pre-flight checks. His cockpit display showed something unprecedented. 4 Krill Marines mag-locked to his hull, armed with portable plasma cannons. Similar configurations appeared across the entire fighter wing. This is Admiral Park to all forces, the comm system crackled. Today, we try something that has never been attempted in galactic warfare. Our Krill allies will ride our fighters into battle, providing additional firepower while we provide mobility. Some call this insane. I call it human innovation, Captain Vex's voice followed. Warriors of Krill, you ride with humans who value your lives above their own. Fight with honor. Fight with fury. Show the swarm the price of attacking our alliance. A roar went up from the Krill frequency. Hundreds of warriors chanting in unison. All fighters. Launch when ready. Commander Ross ordered. Jack engaged his engines, feeling the familiar vibration as the fighter lifted off. The extra weight of the Krill Marines was noticeable but manageable. Through his cockpit, he could see Private Tor directly ahead, the young Krill's plasma cannon already warming up. You ready for this, Private? Jack asked over short-range comm. Ready to follow the mad human anywhere. Tor replied with what sounded like enthusiasm. The human fighters emerged from the carrier in perfect formation, each one carrying Krill Marines like ancient cavalry. The swarm forces, expecting traditional combat, seemed to hesitate at this bizarre sight. That hesitation cost them. All units attack. Ross commanded. Jack dove into the enemy formation, juking between bioplasma streams. The Krill Marines on his hull opened fire, their portable cannons adding devastating firepower to his attack runs. What the fighters lacked in agility from the extra weight, they more than made up for in combined arms. A swarm fighter tried to get behind Jack. Before he could react, Private Tor swiveled his cannon and destroyed it with precise shots. Good shooting. Jack called out, "You fly, we fight." Tor responded. Together, unstoppable. Across the battlefield, the same scene played out dozens of times. Human piloting skills combined with Krill firepower created a synergy neither species could achieve alone. The swarm, adapted to fighting predictable battles, couldn't adjust to this chaotic new tactic. Jack spotted a swarm command ship, larger than the others, with specialized bionodes that coordinated their fleet movements. "Captain Vex, see that big one?" "I see it, human." "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" "Probably something stupid." "Perfect. All Marines, prepare for assault run." Jack pushed his fighter to maximum speed, diving straight at the command ship. Point defense organisms fired clouds of bioacid, but Jack rolled through them, his shields holding. The Krill Marines maintained their fire, clearing a path. They struck the command ship's hull at full speed, the impact jarring everyone. But instead of bouncing off, Jack activated his magnetic clamps, attaching the fighter to the organic hull. "Now!" Vex commanded. The Krill Marines leaped from the fighter onto the swarm ship, their plasma cannons burning through the biological armor. Within seconds, they had created a breach. "Go, go, go!" Jack shouted, providing covering fire as the Marines stormed inside. For 5 minutes that felt like hours, Jack held position while the Krill wreaked havoc inside the command ship. Then explosions began rippling through the organic vessel's structure. "Marines, hit back here now." 4 blue figures burst from the breach, leaping back onto Jack's fighter. The moment the last one attached, Jack disengaged and burned hard away from the dying command ship. Behind them, the swarm vessel exploded in a shower of biomatter. Without coordination, the remaining swarm forces fell into disarray. The human Krill forces pressed their advantage, driving them back. "This is Admiral Park. The swarm is retreating. All forces, pursue and destroy." The celebration on the comm channels was deafening. But for Jack, the sweetest sound was Captain Vex's voice. "Lieutenant Miller, you have shown us the true strength of humanity. Not your technology, not your weapons, but your willingness to stand with allies no matter the odds." As they headed back to the carrier, Jack watched the retreating swarm fleet. Today had been a victory, but more than that, it had been a transformation. 2 species had become something greater together. "Hey, Captain," Jack said. "Want to do this again tomorrow?" Vex's laughter boomed over the comm. "Mad human, I would follow you into the heart of a star." And so the legend began, the story of the human pilot who broke all the rules to save his allies, and in doing so, forged an unbreakable alliance that would change the galaxy forever.